What's up, guys? Jason up New Age Revolution down here in the cave for another Mount Rushmore video. Today we talk about my personal Mount Rushmore, my top 4 WWF tag teams of the 80s. Okay? WWF tag teams of the 80s. Mount Rushmore. Remember, Mount Rushmore is my personal top 4. Now, I think I'll do like a Mount Rushmore greatest in-ring performers of all time, and I think some of my selections will be, the same as most of the world's selections. You got guys like Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage and guys like that that are on everybody's list. If when I do that show, I'll do it more. Maybe more common, more acceptable, I guess. But these Mount Rushmores that I'm doing are exclusive to me. Just like your Mount Rushmores should be exclusive to you. You go back to your childhood, you identify the things that made an impact in your life, or that were important to you, or that meant something to you, and boom, there's your Mount Rushmore. Right? So the Mount Rushmore of WWF tag teams. Now, be aware that I have the benefit, the history, the tape trading history of the early 2000s. I have all this footage to watch, and so a couple of these tag teams, one of these tag teams anyway, I'm watching now, and so it's fresh. Let's see, did I make any changes? Yeah. I might make a change as I'm talking about this. But anyway, the WWF top 4 tag teams of my wrestling history, of my childhood wrestling history. The first one we're going to go with is the U.S. Express, Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. Now, you've heard me talk about those two on this channel at different times of the past. Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo, again, might not be on everybody's Mount Rushmore, but these are Mount Rushmore WWF tag teams of the 80s to me. And the reason, the to me part really applies to Windham and Rotundo, because I feel like my wrestling memories kick in with Windham and Rotundo as tag team champions. I definitely saw Atlas and Johnson win the tag team titles from the Samoans. I definitely saw Adonis and Murdoch win the tag team titles from Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas. But for some reason, the consistent wrestling memories kick in with Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo. In fact, and again, I don't know if this was a dream. I don't know if this is just, whatever that theory is. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Where you think you remember something, but it never really happened. I want to say that I remember being at a cousin's house and watching Madison Square Garden house show, as my parents were mingling with my aunt and uncle. That was always a thing of the 80s, and maybe we'll do whatever happened to visiting, right, someday. But anyway, my parents are hanging out with the aunt and uncle. They're doing whatever they do, play euchre, drink a bunch of beers. I don't know what they were doing. And me and my cousins were all gathered in the living room, and we found, the wrestling was on the TV. And I really remember watching MSG and seeing Barry Windham take on, like, Iron Sheik, and Mike Rotundo take on Nikolai Volkov in singles matches. I don't know. That just seems like the very first card I ever saw. Again, I don't know if it's real. But I do know that Barry Windham and Mike Rotundo really stand out in childhood wrestling for me. Not to mention the fact that they were a fantastic tag team. I mean, both awesome wrestlers. Barry Windham probably, I don't know, for me, a top 10 of all time wrestler. And Mike Rotundo is just solid. You know, he's a solid, skilled ring technician. They were the first, you know, real kind of WWF good guy tag team. You know, you had Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas. I don't think they got over that well. I mean, we're talking about 83. But boom, as the wrestling, as the WWF takes off, you got Wyndham and Rotundo as kind of like your first face champions. You know, couple that with Hogan, Wendy Richter. You know, I think Tito Santana had the Intercontinental belt, trading back and forth with Greg Valentine. Wyndham and Rotundo are it for me. They pop my wrestling memory. I went on a lot about Wyndham and Rotundo, didn't I? Sticking with that same era, I'm adding Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch to this list. Again, not a lot of people will agree. They won't be on a lot of people's Mount Rushmores, but I'm watching them right now. I'm watching them. They have not lost the tag team titles yet. As of 12/84, they are still tag team champions. And their title run was most of 84. And I think that Adonis and Murdoch are extremely underrated wrestlers. They are a dominant tag team, both tough guys, both legit scary tough guys. Both know how to bump around the ring and sell their heads off. And that makes their matches so enjoyable. Especially Dick Murdoch with all of his weird facial expressions. And especially Adrian Adonis, how he throws himself over the top rope and just flops himself all over the ring. I love them. I love Adrian Adonis and Dick Murdoch. Forget the adorable Adrian character. I look forward to watching that and seeing him in the ring and you know, for all the put all the prancing and over the top, you know, gay gimmick aside that he was trying to do. I want to see how he actually performs as Adrian Adonis, as adorable Adrian. I don't remember much, or I wasn't paying attention much back then. But as tough guy Adrian Adonis, you know, New York City Adrian Adonis, you know, they don't come any more impressive. I mean, seriously. And I think that Adonis and Murdoch both teamed with Hogan during the Japan tours of '84. And you know, they would mix all. It'd be confusing as a kid to see, well, why is Dick Murdoch teaming with Hogan? But you know, in Japan, you know, it didn't matter. So they would put them with Hogan. I love them. I really do. I'd like to see more of them. They're not featured all that much, even though they're tag team champions. I've seen a ton of Adonis Murdoch versus the Samoans matches. That was pretty much the feud in '84. That's all I got. That's all I've seen of Adonis and Murdoch. They put them against the Briscoes a few times. WWF wasn't tag team heavy at this time. Who were the good guy tag teams in '84? You know, Johnson and Atlas are done. You know, they'd throw random teams together like Tito and the Junkyard Dog. Tonga and Snuka weren't really a tag team. So they put Adonis and Murdoch with the Samoans all through 1984. So anyway, Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch on my Mount Rushmore. A tag team that I think many of us will agree with. Finally getting into the tag teams that make sense, I suppose. The British Bulldogs are on my Mount Rushmore for a couple of reasons. The main reason is I'd never seen that style of wrestling before. You know, that I guess it's been, you know, coined the cruiserweight style of today. You know, the flippy style, right? The British Bulldogs were the Young Bucks of 1985. But they're great. I mean, they're great. Putting those two together, Davey Boy Smith, Dynamite Kid, so great. You know, Dynamite was I guess the more flippy of the two, the more cruiserweight-ish of the two, and he was just doing stuff that we really hadn't seen before. If we were fans of just, you know, WWF, AWA, NWA wrestling, really didn't see any of that stuff before. You know, some of the electric, fast-paced moves of Dynamite Kid the snap suplexes and the headbutt off the top rope and the, just the speed in the ring, was we were used to lumbering fat guys. That's what wrestling was. So when Dynamite and Davey Boy come in, and then you got Davey Boy, who's I guess the more powerhouse of the two, I suppose. He became eventually obviously the bigger of the two, and then became the heavyweight wrestler that Davey Boy was later on. But as a young, very baby face, literally and figuratively, the youth of those guys, I without looking, I would assume those guys were 23 years old when they broke into the WWF. I would assume, right? Of course, they get a run with the tag team titles. It's an awesome run. One of my favorite tag teams of all time. Forget the Mount Rushmore deal. One of my favorites of all time. Certainly some of my favorite LJNs. Certainly some of the most played with LJNs of my childhood, the British Bulldogs. I love them, and they absolutely deserve a spot on my Mount Rushmore. My final tag team, honestly, I think you guys are going to be surprised. I have a few honorable mentions. One of my honorable mentions could have easily replaced this tag team, because now we're starting to get into an era where I'm fading out a little bit. Late 80s. It's hard to say that this is a tag team of the 80s because they were only in the WWF for like a couple of the 80s. A couple of the 80s, like 88, 89. But their talent is just immeasurable, and the matches that they would put on, I could sit through a 45-minute 2 out of 3 falls match with these guys and the Hart Foundation or the Rougeos or whoever anytime. The Rockers, I feel, deserve a spot on the Mount Rushmore because they're just so good. Shawn Michaels is obviously Shawn Michaels. I mean, what hasn't been said. But Marty Jannetty, I think everybody, we do the Marty Jannetty joke, and, you're the Marty Jannetty of the tag team. Okay, well, that was later in life. Like, Marty didn't fare so well later in life. But back then, he was just as good as anybody. He was awesome. Marty Jannetty was fantastic. So, I don't know what he became later and how he got the moniker, how we mock him later in life, but as a tag team member in the 80s, he's unbeatable. The Rockers are fantastic. The Rockers are so good. In fact, there's some really good matches that I have yet to see, obviously, being stuck in 84, with the Rockers and the Hart Foundation, and the Rockers and the Brainbusters, which is going to be insane. Probably one of the best tag teams of all time. And again, one of my earlier memories is watching the Midnight Rockers in the AWA take on Playboy Buddy Rose and Doug Summers in just an ESPN bloodbath. Fantastic match. I believe it got like match of the year back in '86. But boy, for a TV match, go out of your way to find Midnight Rockers versus Rose and Summers from the Showboat, AWA, ESPN Wrestling. Rockers are on the Mount Rushmore. Okay, so the Samoans could have easily taken the Rockers' spot. The Samoans are great. They were a great heel tag team. They were a great face tag team. I think we forget that they had a very long face run in 1984. Most of 84 was face for the Samoans. I think they started in like February. So that's cool. I love them. The Hart Foundation obviously should be on some people's lists. I have them as an honorable mention. I didn't really love Jim Neidhart. I thought Bret Hart was obviously, one of the greatest of all time. But I didn't love Jim Neidhart. Sheik and Volkov and the Dream Team, just for nostalgia's sake. But I'm not going to choose a tag team that has a weak member, right? And Nikolai Volkov to me was not great. And Brutus Beefcake, obviously, to me was not great. And so I can't put those two tag teams up there, even though they mean a ton to my childhood. I can't put them up there. The Killer Bees were boring. The Rougeos, I guess I look forward to watching them to see if they were boring or not. I think they were. But anyway, that's the WWF Mount Rushmore for me. I'll do an NWA one soon, NWA tag teams, and then I'll do, probably like I'll start. Maybe I'll actually get into like, my top 4 of all time. In-ring performers from WWF, in-ring performers from NWA. Anyway, we'll keep it going. Hope you enjoyed. Good night now.